We need to put a spoiler tag. We need to put a spoiler tag on these discussions because
definitely
we're saying everything about the stories.
Well, and they're from 1984, so.
Yeah, if you haven't read them now, when are you going to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody was going to listen to this, they should probably have paused it and.
We'll be discussing, crucial story elements of the Books of Blood. So go read them and then come listen to this. So.
Exactly. Welcome to episode 2 of the Clive Barker podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Danhauser, and we're joined by Roger Boyce, Jose Leitao, and our special guest, Jonathan Q.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. So, Jonathan, what have you been up to?
Well, we just had a 6-month-old. Our little boy just turned 6 months old this past weekend, so it's been a pretty busy time over here.
Holy cow!
Solid foods, some crying, lots of diaper changes, so hanging in there.
Wow! Yeah, I've got a 5-month-old, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Outstanding.
Okay. And what about Clive Barker related stuff? Have you been doing anything?
I actually just picked up the second volume of the Prophecy, Memory, and Fantasy series that Phil and Sarah Stokes have done. I didn't realize that I hadn't actually completed my purchase back when it came out. So when I saw the announcement on Clive Barker Info that the volumes were still available, I said, well, now's my time to purchase it. So I sent them a quick email, and they were really helpful, and hopefully that'll be on its way shortly.
Awesome. Yeah, I've read the first one, but I have the second one, but I haven't read it yet.
Excellent.
How about you, Jose? What have you been up to?
Well, I started reading Abarat 3 since episode 1.
Yeah.
And I saw Hellraiser Revelations, much to my regret. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. And I also saw a copy of Hellraiser Bloodline in high definition.
Wow.
Like a Blu-ray copy. Yeah,
awesome.
It was really amazing watching it in HD. It's like seeing the movie for the first time again.
Huh.
Really?
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
apart from that, I'll just apologize for my voice being a little, scratchy today because I got the flu. But anyway, nice to be here again.
Thanks for coming anyway. You could have been taking a nap or something. So, and Roger, what have you been up to?
Just started reading the Books of Blood again. The first 3, I think? And boy, that was awesome. I haven't read these in 10, 15 years, and reading them again, it's like, rekindled my love of Clive Barker's writing.
Yeah, and I've done the same. I reread Volume 1. And then I went back and I watched the Book of Blood and the Midnight Meat Train, and I even watched the Yattering and Jack again.
Oh my God!
That's Tales from the Dark Side? Yes, Yattering and Jack.
Yep.
Is that actually on YouTube?
I don't know, but I have the videotape, and I put it onto a DVD a few years ago.
Nice.
So I watched that, and it's kind of we'll get to that. But,
okay.
So yeah, what else have I been up to? Yeah, I mean, me having a baby too, I've been having to sneak this stuff in. You know how it is.
Congratulations!
Trying to find the time to do these things.
One thing I found helpful was the unabridged MP3s of Book of Blood volumes 1 to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really helpful, just listening to it on my iPod, as I commute to and from work, so...
That's cool.
Oh, wonderful. That's cool. So the Books of Blood in the U.S. they're distributed a little differently, aren't they? They have like 3 volumes, and they include Cabal.
Actually, there are all 6 volumes, and they include Cabal. They just have different names. So.
Okay.
We've got, instead of Volume 4 and Volume 5, we have In the Flesh and The Inhuman Condition. And then Volume 6 is just Cabal with stories jammed on the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. In Clive Barker news, the Hellraiser Volume 2 comic?
I have to admit, with a little bit of shame, that I have not been keeping up with the new Hellraiser comic series.
Oh, really?
I picked up the first issue, and I really liked the direction it was going, but I was a little disappointed to find that the last half or so of the first issue was all reprinted from the previous Hellraiser series. I think it was it Raising Hell?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I did pick up the second issue, but it still remains sealed, and I haven't opened it.
Okay.
But I'm hoping to pick up the trade paperback collections, which are a little bit more rugged. So hopefully I'll pick up both of those volumes when they get, when I place my next Amazon order.
Oh yeah, and I want to thank Johnny because he's the reason why I have Hellraiser 1 and 2. He got those comics to me. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So thanks, John.
No problem.
But I think that the following comics they haven't had those reprinted stories at the end. So now
good.
the comics are full artwork from
they're
front cover to back cover.
And speaking of comic art, has anybody chanced upon any of the comic art from this new series anywhere for sale?
Well, I've looked at Tim Bradstreet's website. Tim Bradstreet did the cover for some of the Hellraiser comics, including cover A of number 8, which is that really amazing cover where Pinhead is covering his face with his hand. So I was looking at his website, and he's got some art for sale, but not from Hellraiser.
Interesting.
I did find the cover for Hellraiser 8 for sale, but it costs like almost upwards of $1,250.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it's just the pencils, because the process that he makes the cover is interesting, because he just made the pencils, and then all the rest, all the colors and all the detail was put in digitally. So the artwork is just penciled.
Interesting.
I'm trying to see if he can make a Geekly print of it, because he said he has Geekly prints available from most of his art.
Okay.
So I did I did ask him about it by email. I'm just waiting on a reply.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then the next thing is the Abarat 3 audiobook is out now.
Oh, yeah. I remember listening to some of Abarat 1 audiobook read by Clive Barker, but I think that was just like a teaser thing they put on the Abarat website.
Yeah, he doesn't do the whole thing. Yeah.
No. But Abarat 3 on audiobook, well, the only audiobook I actually purchased so far was Mr. Be Gone, read by Doug Bradley, which I thoroughly recommend.
Well, you have we talked last week, you have the Hellbound Heart also read by Clive Barker, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. I didn't really actually buy that though. Oh. I kind of found it. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I have the original copy of it on the cassettes. I actually listened to it on the road on my way down. I had to drive a couple hours for work, and so I listened to it again. And I know what you mean now about the voice that he did for the Cenobites.
He did this disembodied voice, completely expressionless,
like robots,
which kind of goes towards the stage directions that he gave Doug Bradley while he was playing Pinhead, which is toning it down more and more.
Yeah.
So, but in regards to Abarat, that must be a huge audiobook, because Abarat 3 is a huge volume.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how long it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, then our next thing, Jonathan talked about a little bit. The Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy books. There are still some left, both Volume 1 and 2. and they're on sale. So if anybody wants them, they should go over to the Revelations website. That's clivebarker.info, and get them before they're all gone.
And once again, a note of thanks to Phil and Sarah for putting them together.
Yeah.
Quite a project.
Yeah, and they're amazing. Yeah.
If you're interested in the first few years of Clive Barker's career, how he got to meet all those people like Doug Bradley, Peter Atkins, all the stories about the dog company, these books are for you.
Yeah, so. And Volume 1 goes from the time he was a child up until 1977, and then Volume 2 goes from 1977 to 1981.
An interesting companion book, if you enjoyed those two volumes, is, of course, Doug Winter's biography of Clive Barker called, I think it was The Dark Fantastic. Another excellent book as well.
Oh yeah, that I have that one. It's very, very interesting. It really goes into depth into Clive Barker's childhood and early teenage years, and even when he moved to the U.S. and all the things he went through. So that's cool. Also a really interesting book to get. I was talking about this little book that was called Clive Barker, Mythmaker for the Millennium.
Oh yeah,
because we were talking about
Gary
references about. No, that book is Clive Barker's short stories. Imagination is Metaphor, and the Books of Blood and Other. This one was a little book by Suzanne Barbieri.
Oh yeah,
it's Clive
I
Barker
tried to buy that, and it went out of print really fast.
There's two copies on eBay right now, but they're both in the United Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because this book was published by the British Fantasy Society.
Yeah, that makes
sense. It's a small chapbook, and it's interesting. So if you guys find a copy, it's interesting.
Okay, well, our next thing I wanted to go into, what are our predictions, Clive Barker-related stuff for 2012. Roger, what do you think is going to happen in 2012?
Well, I'm not really sure what he's working on and stuff, but, the short stories collection, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm hoping that'll be out because, from what I've heard, it's pretty much all done. It just little edits here and there or something, and an actual publisher I think he needs, but, that would make my year right there.
That would be awesome. I would have thought it would be cool to call it The Books of Blood Volume 7, but I don't know, maybe that's just, I like collecting things and putting things in order.
I was thinking about that too, because, his, continue to thing, but his whole Books of Blood thing, that was like, okay, these stories are written in the guy's, skin, and this one, maybe it's got like a slightly different angle to it. Maybe he's got another wraparound story for that one.
Yeah, maybe so. Okay, and Jonathan, what's your prediction for this year?
Well, I always hope every year that the Scarlet Gospels will come out, but I don't think that's going to be very likely until the other Abarats come out first. But I imagine there will probably be more signings to help promote the release of Abarat 3. So far, there have only been a few announced, as far as I know. I think he's going to be coming here to Monster Mania in August for an appearance. In terms of, I would also guess that probably, and this is not based on any solid fact, but my impression would be that we'll probably see more in terms of his artwork and photography than we necessarily will with his novels and short stories in 2012.
Okay, and Jose, what do you think?
Well, like Jonathan, I would be happy if the Scarlet Gospels came out. And, while I'm dreaming, I would also like to see Tales of a... Wait, no. Oh, wait. So the collection of short stories, which started off by being the Scarlet Gospels, then
Black
changed
the
name
Devil's
to
Rainbow.
Tales of a Journeyman, and then it became Black is the Devil's Rainbow, Tales of a Journeyman. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see that come out because... To be honest, there are a few of those short stories which are going to be collected into that volume, I think, which I haven't gotten a hold of yet. Some of them were published in, other books as, anthologies or something. So I would really like to see that.
And there are some that were never published anywhere.
Yes, some actual original stories, I think, that he's working on or has worked on and intends on publishing them in that volume. Yeah. I also would like to see Candle... wait. How's it called?
Candle
the Candle in the Cloud?
Yeah. Candle in the Cloud.
because Roy from Bad Moon Books has been publishing those early Clive Barker teenage stories.
Yeah.
So he published like Maximilian Bacchus and, you know. And I would really love to see The Candle in the Cloud, which is supposed to be the first novel that Clive wrote when he was like 13 or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that was in the works somehow, but I don't know what's going on at Bad Moon Books. So I don't know if they have a schedule for that.
We hear about those years before they ever come out. So we've been hearing about Candle in the Cloud right after Maximilian Bacchus. We heard about that.
Exactly. And on the topic of those early stories, there's one early story published in that book that Jonathan referred to, which is The Dark Fantastic by Douglas E. Winter. Mm-hmm. At the end of that book, there's also a short story from Clive Barker that he wrote when he was a kid. Do you remember that, Jonathan?
I actually don't. It's been quite a few years since I read The Dark Fantastic.
Wood on the Hill or something like that?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But other things I would like to see come out, and I expect them to come out, would be, I don't know, maybe another third volume of Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 2 years since the last one, so that would make sense.
Yeah, so I hope that, Phil and Sarah are, making good headway on that. But, of course, we know these things take time.
Yeah.
And they're doing great work, so I'm all for perfection instead of, quantity. So whenever they feel like publishing it, I would like to see it this year. But if they can't, then that's fine too. And I would also say that we will see more of Clive's photography and, more exhibits, because I think Clive just switched galleries. I think Bert Green no longer carries Clive Barker. So
really?
Yeah, I think that Bert Green has stopped. I think he's in the process of switching galleries right now. So.
Interesting. Oh. I mean, while we're on the topic, I think another thing, while we're making a shopping list, I also would like to see, it would be nice if more of his artwork prints became available again. I absolutely love Clive's paintings, and I've always enjoyed it when reproductions of his art have been available in small quantities. Especially when he had those series of 4 prints that were available in reproduction for only, I think, $40 a piece on canvas.
Oh, yeah.
And then those were canvas G-slaves as well. And I picked up 1 or 2 of those, and I kind of miss those. I'd like to get another one of those if I could.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. So I really hope that this year would be the year that we get to see the Scarlet Gospels and the short story novel anthology.
Yeah.
I mean...
So that was my prediction. I was thinking Scarlet Gospels, Black is the Devil's Rainbow, and Volume 3 of the Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy.
From the legendary mind of Clive Barker.
You are a book of blood.
There is a pathway to the unknown that only a special few can cross.
There's a house. Something terrible happened there. Something unexplained. You have a gift, Simon. Help me find out what happened in that house.
What's he bringing to the party?
If there's even the slightest chance he can help us to open this house up, I'm going to encourage him.
There is something going on in this house. It's chosen me. I'm supposed to be here. The dead have highways. Highways that lead to intersections. And intersections that spill into our world. And if you find yourself at one of those intersections, you should stop and you should listen. Because the dead have stories to tell.
Between fear and evil lie the stories of the dead.
They keep writing.
Clive Barker's Book of Blood.
So the next, I guess then that brings us on to the main topic, which is the Books of Blood Volume 1. So we can start off with the Book of Blood. It's kind of rather than an introduction to the stories, Clive kind of made a story that's an introduction to the stories, which is interesting. I haven't seen that before in any collection.
Yeah, so basically it was a nice way of gathering up the stories and giving the stories a backstory. So it's like all these stories are written on McNeil's skin, right?
Yes.
Because that's the main character of the first bookend story of the Books of Blood.
So yeah, Mary Florescu is investigating this haunted house, and she's got an assistant, and I can't remember what that guy's name is.
Russell or Reg, I think. Reg, is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, hold on, let me check.
Yeah, Reg.
Reg, it is Reg. Reg
Okay.
Fuller. Reg Fuller.
Yeah, there we go. So and we don't in the story we don't really know exactly why they flesh that out more in the movie, but in the story we don't really know what she's investigating it for. But it turns out that that McNeil is kind of a fraud, and he's been pretending. He's been writing stuff on the wall with a little piece of lead that he's stuck under his tongue, pretending that they're stories from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the dead don't like it, and they come out and scratch their stories into his skin. So they start out with broken pieces of glass from a bottle that broke on the floor.
Yes, at number 65 Tollington Place.
Yes.
That's the address of the house, actually.
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be... they were supposed to be studying more Simon McNeil, the medium, rather than the house. But in the movie adaptation, they start off by studying the house because there have been some murders committed there.
Yeah.
And then she meets Simon McNeil. And that's when she finds out that he's got powers.
And there's some backstory to the movie that I think that they had to do to flesh it out, because it would have been a really short movie. But they gave they gave backstory to McNeil that he used to be a psychic, but he lost it, and he can't stand the fact that he lost his ability. So he liked having the attention again of people thinking that he's gifted.
They added a little element of tragedy that his brother died in a car crash, and so.
And
but in the story,
it makes him an interesting character because he was just vain and kind of a jerk in the short story, and in the movie he's that, but he's also kind of this tragic figure.
Yeah, he's got the little doe-eyed thing, and like he's smart, but he doesn't let in that he's that smart. He's he's got a little bit of malice in there. Mm-hmm. He's working his own agenda, so yeah.
And Mary Florescu, there's a little bit of backstory for her in the movie as well. When she was a kid, she saw a vision of a fountain with blood coming out of it and all these kids around it. And she didn't know what it meant, so she just let it go. And then they found out that one of the neighbors had murdered a girl and murdered a bunch of other girls also. And she felt bad, like if she had just told people that he wouldn't have, they would have caught him before he'd murdered some of those girls.
Yeah, the story is just 15 pages, so to make a movie, they really had to pad it a little bit, add a little character to it.
And it's okay if we talk about the other bookend story, the
Jerusalem Street?
Yeah, I think we have to if we're going to talk about the movie.
Yeah. So that's from Volume 6, but we should probably talk about that too, because Simon McNeil...
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and it's in Volume 6 on the British editions, and in some hardcovers in the U.S. it's on the collected 1 through 3, or on... or in the end of Volume 3 sometimes. So we've got kind of a weird bunch of collected sets we can choose from, I guess, in the U.S.
Yeah, I have yet to read that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I actually didn't refresh my recollection and reread that story yet. Yeah,
I did because it's only like 5 pages, so I read it really quick. But it's so it starts off with an assassin. His name is Wybird, and he has broken into presumably McNeil's house. And he's like, "How did you get in here?" He's like, "Oh, I went over the wall." And Simon, or it's not Simon. What is his name? McNeil.
Yeah, it is Simon.
Simon McNeil said, "So how much is it worth?" He's like, "What are you talking about? My skin. How much is it worth?" So Simon knew that he was there to kill him and take his skin for a collector. And that's a little bit different from what we get in the movie, because in the movie Simon was running away from Mary, who was using his skin to write these best-selling novels. And sort of she was a nice person at the beginning of the movie, and then she kind of turned evil towards the end.
Yeah.
Well, I have a number of issues with the Mary character from the film.
Yeah,
a number of issues.
And the worst part for me is at the very end when... Okay, so the briefcase with Simon's skin in it, oozes blood and fills up this guy's, ramshackle apartment and drowns him, which is what's in the story. But then at the end, Mary comes back and collects the briefcase. And what we're supposed to assume is that Mary had hired the assassin to come and kill Simon so that she could get his skin back, because that's all she cared about. And I didn't like that. I liked it better in the short story that it was just some collector that liked to collect skins.
Yeah, I would go more with the original thing too. I mean, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
The whole idea of a collector.
Yeah.
And you can imagine this, fictional collector in his house with other skins. That would be really amazing.
Played by Doug Bradley.
Yes.
Although he is already in the movie as a kind of Aleister Crowley figure that got killed by the spirits in the house.
Yeah, and you first see him in a little newspaper cover story thing, and then he's got a portrait in the house, and then after that he lives in a dream, like in flashback that Mary has, because we find out that she's psychic also.
Yeah, but if I could just add a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. You were talking about the books of blood being like stories being told from the perspective of, grouped by this original Book of Blood story, where these are little texts that allegedly are carved into Simon McNeil's skin.
Yes.
And I was just looking at the book from Gary Hoppenstand, The Imagination as Metaphor, in the Books of Blood and Other Works, and they make a very interesting comparison to Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man, which also The Illustrated Man is a Carnival Free character who was also used to introduce the short stories in the Illustrated Man anthology. So in that aspect, I think that there's a certain term of comparison between the stories being related to the character. Yeah. Yes, he's a completely tattooed character, the Illustrated Man. So there's a similarity here.
I'm sure sure that's probably an influence, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents on this, is that I was actually... I think that the film was reasonably well acted, well shot, but it absolutely missed something very important. The short story, one of the things that made the Book of Blood short story such an incredible read, I feel, was the sense of wonder that it gave you. Yeah. When Mary really sees the horizon with the intersection of the dead and all of the spirits, there was a sense of wonder, a palpable wonder. A world was being opened in front of her. And my problem with the Book of Blood film, besides the character of Mary, which we'll talk about later, was the fact that the entire film was permeated with a sense of mourning, of loss. Yeah. There was none of the wonder that made the Book of Blood story so captivating.
If I could add to that, also the dead world, when it opened up, and it was so fantastic and so powerful that it made Russell, it made he just died because he couldn't take it, and then he fell over and he kind of like fried on the door on the floor. Yes. Yeah. And in the film, What was it? Something happened to him, and he fell over the railing and down, off the banister and down onto the first floor and died just from falling.
Yeah, like Jonathan is telling, that it's missing that sense of awe, that sense of like another world rushing towards your spirit or something, and opening up your horizon in such a strong way that you're just blown away by this other dimension that all of a sudden opens up in front of you, and it's like
I did like
all
the
the
way that
dead people
the way
walking
that
around there.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I did like the way that they showed the house, because it was a townhouse, right? So, but they showed it cut away from all the other houses, and the way that it was an intersection with all of the dead roads, and I thought that looked pretty cool. But there wasn't much of that. It was just really kind of teasing glimpses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the movie. Like Johnny says, the character of Mary, there are certain things that, didn't work very well with the choices. Like, for example, putting her at the end of the movie instead of some other random collector that would be like a more exotic figure trying to get his skin to hang on his study in Rio de Janeiro or something like that.
Yeah.
But I actually thought the movie was very entertaining.
And in the story...
I enjoyed it.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed it, more than other adaptations that have come out that year. So it was okay. It was okay. Although they did have to pad it a lot to make a proper movie. So
and I think that padding is understandable. I mean, in order to tell that sort of story visually for that length of time, you almost have to. But at the same time, I think they did a great injustice to the Mary character because she is not at all believable from the start as a scientist. Yeah. I mean, her assistant Russell is the only one who is questioning the validity of what this Simon guy is doing. And she dives into believing him, and she starts out in love with him. Whereas, I mean, there was really no build-up. There was no the characters didn't really develop into, her falling for him. She began in love with this guy and threw all of her scientific training out the window. And I think, I mean, in terms of scientists, characters in film, she was only less believable than I think it was Denise Richards as a nuclear physicist in that James Bond film, and Nicole Kidman as a psychiatrist in Batman Forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. Harsh. We have to point out that Jonathan is a scientist. Well, I'm a scientist too, but I can completely see that point. But it's just Johnny. It's just her heart will go on, and she was like, It's a strength of.
And in the
it's the power of love, Johnny.
And in the story that she at the end she wants to take care of him. So I mean she probably would be She was going to be translating the stories, but she also wanted to take care of him. So then this sort of.
Well, I think it's fine that she was in love with him, but I mean, it wasn't a process. She met the guy and she was instantly in love with him to the point where she threw out. All of her reasoning and caution, and it was a little much. It was a little much.
Well, and my point was that in the movie they did all of that, and then they just threw it away at the end. It's like she hired an assassin to kill him.
I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah. Okay.
We don't know for a fact that she hired the assassin, but it's implied, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah,
she did.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, but if I can add something, I don't think that the character of, I don't think she so much falls in love with him as they introduce a really powerful element of sexual tension in the movie.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of scenes in the movie that they're really powerful, and there's a lot of tension between them.
And they don't hide it at all. I mean, she even, when it gets too much, she even has a dream about it.
Yeah, I don't really see that she's like trying to protect him or falling in love with him. It's more like raw sexual tension in my viewing of the movie.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I got that from performance. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah. So, and one thing I've noticed in all of these, in actually a lot of these stories, rereading this the first issue or episode or volume of the Books of Blood, is that it starts with, you've got your characters, and it starts with them and what they're trying to do, and then he switches really quickly into telling you what's wrong with this picture. You know what I mean? Like, switching immediately to Simon and saying, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a fraud. So he does a lot of, in these stories, he does a lot of dramatic irony where you know what's going on, but the characters don't. And we'll see that again in the Midnight Meat Train. But we see it in the Book of Blood. You know, they're like, okay, you know, we're gonna set this all up, and we're gonna have Simon, who's this great psychic. He's gonna talk to the dead, and you know, this is great and everything. And Simon, and then they switch over to Simon. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a fraud. I'm just doing this.
Yeah.
And the
they
way
allow
it's
us a little glimpse.
Yeah, the way that the perspective switches. I mean, it's third person omniscient, but it switches between these characters that I think that they're the ones that you're supposed to be more in sync with or more sympathetic with, and then to the other person who's sort of the bad guy but not really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess...
and also, one thing...
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to go on to the next one, but go ahead.
If I can just say something, just to talk about this. I think in the movie, I also got a different vibe from why the dead write on Simon McNeil in the movie and in the book.
Yeah.
Because the way I saw it, it was like almost kind of a revenge in the movie. They were like, he made fun of us, so now we're going to write on him. And in the book, it's more like the dead have this urging need to have their stories told.
Yeah.
And as soon as they manage to, sneak a little bit through the crack at, 65 Tollington into Simon McNeil, they have a hunger to tell their story. And that's why they write it feverishly on his skin.
Yeah.
Even though it's, almost killing him. But I thought that was a difference in the intention of the dead telling their story in the movie and in the book.
It's kind of a subtle difference because the movie has both. I mean, they do write "Don't mock us" on the wall a whole bunch of times, for all those different people who got killed and stuff. But they also do use they do take lines from the story and say, and the dead are unburdened from the telling. And
oh yeah, that's true. They did add a lot of lines from the first and last few paragraphs of the story to the movie. That was a really nice touch. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it gave it kind of a Candyman feel.
The Hellraiser fan in me liked the the reference that she had unknowingly fingered and fumbled at unlocking the crack by slow degrees. So kind of like solving the puzzle a little bit. So I really enjoyed that.
Okay, so the next one is the Midnight Meat Train.
What interests you?
The city. Because no one's ever captured it. Not the way it really is. That's my goal. That's my dream.
Then you're failing. The next time you find yourself at the heart of the city, stay put. Keep shooting.
It began with a photograph. A single act of unthinkable evil.
What happened?
I saw it.
Take your pictures to the cops.
I wasn't stalking her.
But you did continue to photograph.
These represent missing people for the last 3 years.
The only way to make it stop.
I followed them into the subway. He butchers them like cattle. They never find the remains because he unloads the meat somewhere.
Is to go for the ride.
I got a train to catch.
Midnight Meat Train.
We'll start with the story. So we have the two characters, and kind of like the Book of Blood, it's going back and forth between the two. And one of them is kind of an anemic accountant. I think. What is
Leon Kaufman?
Leon Kaufman, yeah, thank you. And he's kind of an accountant, and he talks about how he was all in love with New York City and excited about moving there, and then when he got there, how disappointed he was. And how it's really, it's really seedy and dark, and he doesn't like it anymore. I mean, I get that's kind of a crude way to put it, but. And then the perspective switches to Mahogany, and it teases you just for a few pages about like his duty and what he's doing, and then they go right into it. Oh yeah, he's slaughtering people on the subway to feed the city fathers.
Kaufman is kind of like the exact opposite of Mahogany in a way, and Mahogany is very, very complex. I mean, we tend to, It comes off like a brute that doesn't really, have any inner life or inner monologue. Mm-hmm. But he's kind of aristocratic.
He comes off really
he
arrogant.
has a ritual.
Yeah, he thinks he's better than everybody else because he knows this. He knows about this
special, yes.
Yeah, this secret that no one else knows, and he's employed by these sort of demigod things or whatever they are.
Exactly, and he has this ritual that he does. He folds the clothing of his victims. He, gets rid of their body hair, and he does all that stuff really neatly and very methodically. And then the others, and he's also a brutal serial killer. So it's kind of a complex thing going on there with him, because it's like he's initiated into this special order.
And so the problem with him is that he's getting old. And he keeps screwing up, and he says, they can't blame me. I'm getting older. So he gets caught in, or he gets interrupted, and his victims get found sometimes before he can deliver them to the city fathers. Kaufman falls asleep on the train, but then he wakes up and he still has a chance to get off the train. But he hears this chopping sound, and he looks through the window, and what he sees is so horrible that he passes out. Then he misses his chance to get off the train. And he's this is not like the movie, he's only got one trip on the train. He doesn't keep going back like in the movie. And so he passes out, he slips in the blood, I think he passes out. But then when he wakes up, he had rolled under the seat, right? So Mahogany walks past him and doesn't notice him at first.
Exactly. He didn't really see him there because he slipped and he passed away and he rolled under the seats.
Yeah.
And then he gets to find out that there's a different line that nobody else saw, and the train just takes that line, and it's a line that seems to be a very clean butcher-like place. All the station is like very white, and everybody's cleaning everything, and there's a whole cleanup crew that takes care of the mess that Mahogany does on the train. So that right there is really, really creepy. It's like there's this institutionalized system in this underworld that nobody ever saw before. Yeah.
So the fight between Kaufman and Leon is pretty
Mahogany
short. Mahogany and Kaufman.
I never really. Has anybody else got the vibe that Mahogany might be a cannibal? I'm just putting it out there.
I don't know. I suppose it could be. They don't really go into much of his personal life. Everything's all about his duty and.
So you were talking about Kaufman's fight with Mahogany, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really short in the story. That fight is only. He grabs a knife and jams it into Mahogany's throat. Mahogany takes a swing at him, gets his knife stuck in one of the bodies, and then so he gets this knife jammed in his throat, and there was this description that it felt like a chicken bone or something, like a bone was wedged in his throat, and it was uncomfortable, and he could feel he was losing his vision and his hearing, and he knew that he was dying. It's kind of a creepy description of what it feels like when you die, which Clive has been really good at.
Yes. And then he meets the City Fathers.
Yes. And this, I had a little bit of a problem with the comic adaptation versus the story in this.
Yeah.
Which
volume has the adaptation? Is this in Tapping the Vein, or is this in...
Yeah, it's Tapping the Vein. So
it's 1990.
Yeah, so first of all, they show Mahogany as this kind of juggernaut-looking guy. He's like this kind of blob with no neck. And it uses text from the story to describe what you're seeing in the art. And sometimes the things that they're showing with the art don't mesh with what they're describing. So, like it says that Kaufman stabbed him in the neck, and then it shows in the art that he stabbed him in the chest, probably because that Mahogany didn't have a neck.
Oh, yeah.
I did not catch that.
I didn't either.
Yeah, me neither.
That kind of bothered me, and then they did the way it describes the City Fathers being all kind of sickly, and where some of them wearing patchwork clothes that are made out of human skin, and then you actually see the art of them, and they just look like these normal muscly guys wearing pink underwear.
Oh yeah, I did notice that because one of them actually has a six-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got Patrick Stewart's hairline.
Yeah, and in this, and it describes how it seems like a struggle for them to climb into the train, but then you see the art and they're all muscly, and I don't know. I didn't like that particular adaptation of it. I felt like, why am I even looking at this? I could just read the story.
Well, they were trying to make them look like camels, I think. That's what the impression I got.
They didn't really look much more... they didn't really look much like... much different from regular people.
Right.
But wasn't that Clive's intention, I think, maybe?
Well, he said
that they're more
men,
human,
but they looked all kind of diseased, and they looked like really old men, and they were wearing human skins. But then in the story, also you get to see they're kind of like their god. It's this blobby thing that's hard to make out.
Yeah,
kind of like a glowing amoeba sort of thing.
Kind of a Lovecraftian creature or something, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And they did a good job depicting that at the end of the comic.
It's a double page splash. I'm actually looking at it right now.
And that's not bad. I think they did the best they could with, describing something that's indescribable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, they in the movie...
they skipped that guy.
What? They skipped that guy, yeah. That's like... I was expecting him to show up, and I wanted to see, let's see what they're coming up with.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, it's just the City Fathers. There's a pile of skulls there, and, that's it.
Let's be honest, though. If they had actually tried to visualize something like that on film, on the medium of film, it would have been CG.
Yes.
And I really don't think there's anything that they could have done that would not have been disappointing.
I don't know. I think you could make something like that, and I think people would have been okay with it.
I think a lot of people, the non-Barker fans, a lot of them I could imagine reacting like, why is there a big glowing blob that's suddenly the big bad guy in the film that we hadn't heard anything about before?
Well, the producers didn't even want them to have the City Fathers at all. They just wanted Mahogany to be a serial killer.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So there was a really big push to Kitamura to make him cut out all of that ending stuff.
It's actually pretty obvious that that's what the producers may have been aiming for, because in the short story, Mahogany is very much very human. They talk about his ex-wife, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
And like all of his internal thoughts, which are very, very shallow, very, I'm powerful, I'm the big guy, when he's really not. Whereas in the film, they really tried to turn him very supernatural. So it was very clear that the producers really wanted this to be much more of a supernatural sort of character.
Yeah, like he'd been doing it for about 200 years, and all of his contact with the monsters was starting to take its toll. He was growing these horrible tumors all over his body.
Is that what those were? I couldn't figure out what that was supposed to be.
So he was cutting them off and stacking them up in jars.
I didn't know what those were because they never really went back and explained any rationale for having that
The
scene
audio
there.
commentary, Clive Barker and Kitamura talk about it a little bit.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I also remember looking at that scene with Vinnie Jones in front of the mirror in the bathroom. Yeah. And he unbuttons his shirt, and sure enough, his torso is full of those weird, things, and he just, cuts one of them, puts it in a little jar, and he goes all,
Yeah, and I had kind of wondered if they were some sort of, eggs or something from something that was going to grow into monsters before hearing the audio commentary.
If this had been a Cronenberg movie, they probably would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a great touch because, just out of the blue, you get this, this is, like you were saying, supernatural kind of thing thrown in there. Nothing to do with, you could take that scene out and, have, the rest of the movie, not even worry about it. But it's there, and it's adds an extra layer of Clive Barker-ish Kitamura.
And almost everything that they added to this movie, I thought worked and was really cool.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Had you guys seen any of Kitamura's work before?
No. I've seen Godzilla Final Wars.
Oh, that was his?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Then yes, I have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just found out that was his, too. So I saw that, too.
Yeah.
But
and
I saw another movie.
No.
I think I saw a movie that involved two guys in kind of a locked room. And,
Saw?
I'm trying... No. No, it was two guys in a locked room, and there's, all these things happening. It's like a kind of a spaceship, and they're I forgot the name. That was my first exposure to Kitamura, so I was a little wary that he was going to do the adaptation for Midnight Meat Train, but it came off really, really nice. Only thing I was a little disappointed at, on one hand, because on the other hand I really enjoyed it, was the character of Mahogany being played by Vinnie Jones. I really had envisioned a completely different, build for the character. Big, chunky guy, So, and then they put, Vinnie Jones. Kind of makes sense because you want someone that's strong and, that's, tough.
And the hammer is emphasized a lot more in the movie than in the short story.
Oh, yeah. And the hammer was bought on the Fangoria auction by Doug, which will probably show up on a further episode of the Clive Barker cast.
He owns that hammer?
Yeah. I think he owns the hammer. Either it's the hammer or a few knives or something from the auction.
Holy
cow.
So,
yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, the briefcase, Mahogany's briefcase went up for $200 or $250, so it was really cheap.
Yeah.
It is really cheap.
So what was your guys' overall opinion of this movie?
I actually, this is Jonathan, I actually really enjoyed the way it was shot. Really vivid use of color, which I think is a huge contrast to the film adaptation of Book of Blood, which was very drab and very overcast.
Yeah.
And not just from the weather. I think it had to do with color temperature as well. But this was really well shot. I really liked how the writers expanded the story and introduced characters that really served a good purpose. I thought the wife was a nice touch. The fact that Leon actually had a wife in the film.
Yes.
Which was kind of like a grounding influence on him to try to tether him to his humanity.
And it didn't work. And she's kind of chasing him, trying to get him to stop what he's doing.
Yes, and the fact that they changed Leon from kind of a very timid accountant to an almost curious photojournalist was really a great move. It really, really was. It opened it up. It opened up the story a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those changes, I thought that they would bother me, but seeing the movie, they didn't at all. And I love, like you were saying, I love the way that it was shot, and I love the way everything is all clinical and kind of steel looking, and
yes,
and especially in high definition. I have to say
that some of that may be because they also filmed it in the LA metro system. If they had actually filmed it in New York, I don't think they could have pulled that same sort of look in the subway system, because our subways don't look anything like that.
Well, I think they made up those subways too. To make them look more like a butcher shop.
Yeah. Oh no, I meant the station platforms, the really blue lit station platform, with a wide stairwell. That was really nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I can say something about the movie, is that I really enjoy the movie for the same reasons you guys are talking about. But there are two things that really take me out of the movie, and I wasn't happy. One of them, I understand the need to kind of open up a movie with a really brutal scene to get the audiences, pumping. Yeah. But the first time, when the movie begins, the first scene, when the guy with the shaved head wakes up, and he's alone in the train. He hears a noise. He starts to walk towards the door. He slips and falls, and he finds out that he's laying on a huge puddle of blood, and that covers almost half of the floor of the car. I mean, well, didn't he notice that?
He was
it just kind of takes me off.
Yeah, he's still waking up.
Okay, well, I can see that, but still, if I wanted to nitpick, I could go how did the blood cross from one car to the next?
Oh.
But that's just me nitpicking, and but it really takes me out of the movie. That whole thing.
I see.
If it was a little bit of blood, I could see that working. All of a sudden, it's the lake of blood that he's laying on, and it's holy shit.
Well, maybe
holy moly!
The fight started in their car, and then it moved into the other one.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah,
well, and in the audio commentary, Clive and Kitamura explain it like it's Leon. It's his first job, and so he's really bad at it, and he makes a big mess.
Oh,
it's Leon's first job.
Yeah, so it's kind of
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So they come back around to it at the end of the movie when you see Leon with his briefcase on the train, and that guy is there.
That makes perfect sense now.
That changes everything.
That does.
Oh wow, I had no idea. I thought it was mahogany at the beginning, and I was like, oh yeah, well, that could be. I mean, it does end with the guy with the mahogany haircut at the end, and yeah, that works.
But
okay,
again, this actually brings into sharp relief the fact that it would be nice if some of these sorts of connections had been made clear, like the tumor scene, like what exactly was it that we were seeing there, and this opening scene. If we had known that this was going to be kind of the wraparound to the end, or if at the ending it were a little clearer that we were seeing what was about to come at the beginning of the film, I think that might have been a little bit more effective.
So
but do you want to be hand-fed everything, though?
No, perhaps not. But, I mean, there's a difference between being hand-fed and it being so obscure that it's difficult to make the connection without listening to the audio commentary.
Yeah, well, the first scene, I didn't know that was, what is his name?
Leon.
Leon?
Yeah.
Leon.
Yeah, Leon. I didn't realize it was Leon until I, watched the commentary. But in, second viewings, when you go back and this is a movie you can definitely watch over and over, even though it's, like you're supposed to be your slasher film.
Yeah.
This is something you can watch over and over, and you learn new little things.
Okay. Yeah. Point taken.
Well, my impression of it is that this is the hardest movie for me to watch, just because of the violence. Because, I mean, it's one thing, I don't mind, Hellraiser and Nightbreed and stuff like that, and I'm used to these 80s horror movies. But I don't watch movies like Saw or Hostel or, I don't know,
right,
all
with gore.
These super, super violent movies. So when I first saw this movie, it just was like, oh my God. And I didn't watch it again for a long time. I think it's really good, but I have a hard time... it makes me really squirmy, I guess, to see this movie.
Well, it's the Midnight Meat Train.
Yeah.
Which
you
also
gotta have that.
Yeah, they don't, and it doesn't do the classic horror moves like cutting away before he kills somebody. He hits this lady in the face with the hammer, and they just stay on it. It's let's see what happens to her face when she gets hit in the face with a hammer.
And you can have a choice of seeing one eyeball pop out or two eyeballs pop out.
Yeah. Hey, so, speaking of that, I think we talked about this last week, but Jonathan, did you ever get to see this in the theater?
No, I did not. And actually, I was about to bring that up. Wasn't it? It was slated for a wide theatrical release, but then it got bumped because of some politicking at one of the distributors, right?
Yeah. So there was a guy at Lionsgate that was a friend, kind of a friend to the project, and their champion, and everything was moving along great. And then that guy left Lionsgate, and this other guy took over, and the other guy had his own agenda. and he's Clive. They kept calling, and Kitamura wasn't getting any response. So Clive called and said, "Hey, what's going on? Why haven't I seen any trailers for this movie yet?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we just can't put together enough. There's not enough good material to make a trailer." So then Clive was like,
Wow.
"What? That's something else is going on here, because there's plenty in this movie that you could use for a trailer." And so it turns out that this guy was also a producer for a movie called The Strangers. And
I think I'd heard about that.
He gave The Strangers the release date that Midnight Meat Train was supposed to get, which was in May of 2008.
That sucks.
What's incredible is, with experiences like this, it's really not shocking that Clive Barker's not interested in directing another film. I mean, how discouraging is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Yeah. And they just dumped the movie into $1 theaters. I mean, just
like
to
100
fulfill
theaters,
their, just to fulfill their contract obligation. They just dumped it on $1 theaters, and that was it. That was it for. Do you guys remember seeing Clive Barker asking people to mail dead things to Lionsgate?
I saw the petition where you're supposed to write an email to that guy at Lionsgate.
Yeah.
Back when they thought they still might have had a chance to get it into the theaters. They could have just delayed it and done it in June or July. It would have been just fine.
Well, it was the case of the new guy coming in, throwing out all the old guy's projects, so the new guy would look better.
It wasn't just Clive Barker either. I mean, it wasn't just this movie. There were a few movies that they did it to. Just awful. And whenever I watch a movie and I see that Lionsgate, with the gears and all of that, it kind of makes my stomach churn a little bit.
Yeah, I get that way when I saw a Dimension logo pop up.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest. That's another reason why, to this date, I refuse to watch The Strangers.
Oh yeah, I've never seen it either.
Yeah.
No.
All right. So, you know what I really want to see a movie adaptation of?
What's
The
that?
Yattering and Jack.
All right. Well, that's a good transition, because that's our next one. So, The Yattering and Jack is a comedy, which Clive almost never does. Or at least it feels like
it's very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, it is. And we can talk about the Eclipse, or we could talk. There's an Eclipse graphic novel, and I haven't actually read that in a long time, so I don't really. I think that the Yattering looks kind of like impish. She's got really long, pointy ears. Yeah.
It's really well done. I mean, it's a really well done adaptation.
Yeah.
And here's a little Easter egg. If you guys look at the adaptation, I don't know if any of you guys is holding it right now, but there is a picture of Clive painted in the background where they're talking about the jerkin salesman, the main character of the story. There's a little picture of Clive painted back there on that little montage that they have with his wife and all that stuff. Yeah. So there's a little picture of Clive there painted. So just wanted to mention that.
So have all three of you guys seen the Tales from the Dark Side adaptation?
I have not.
Yeah,
I have seen it. They got a little midget.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not bad. It gets the kind of the meat of the story. It changes a lot of details to make it more TV friendly. Like do
they not have exploding cats?
It was referred to that he had in the past put the cat in the microwave.
Wow.
So like when the Yattering was talking to Beelzebub, he's like, I even put his cat in the microwave. So like it had happened before the show started.
Nice.
Oh boy.
And the Yattering was kind of a little person, I guess, painted red, with cloven hooves and little horns on his forehead.
And little horns, man! That when I saw that, I was like, "Oh God, what did he do?"
I have to find this now.
You do.
And other details that were
Clive
changed.
Barker,
Go ahead.
Clive Barker actually did write the screenplay for that.
Oh, the teleplay?
Yeah, I saw that in the credits.
I'm looking at a screen capture from Yattering on Google Images. I'm pretty sure that guy was in the Six String Samurai. Who played Yattering.
Oh,
the guy who played Jack Polo?
No, the guy who played the Yattering.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm almost certain he's in the trailer for Six String Samurai. It's a cult classic film.
I'll let Ryan speak. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I think one major difference, between the two was that the wife committed suicide in the short story, and in the TV show, she just got a divorce from him. And then he had 2 daughters in the short story, and one of them became a lesbian, and in the teleplay one, he had just one daughter who came back to visit.
But just my opinion of the short story is that it's really fun to read.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the whole back and forth. That the Yattering he's trying as hard as he can to. He's trying as hard as he can to get Jack Polo to acknowledge him at some point.
Yeah.
Like, he boils the fish in the aquarium while he's reading the newspaper. And he doesn't... He's just playing his own game, and Jack Polo is, playing it cool, is like, don't say anything.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, the Yattering is like... He's like a pistol pusher from hell. He's like, he has to get the soul of this guy. And at some point, I think that he asks Beelzebub, right? That why this guy? Why a jerkin salesman?
Yeah.
And the comic book adaptation has, it's really well done, and I won't spoil it. So if you guys can find anybody listening to this, if you guys can find the Yattering and Jack, it's a really fun comic book, and I think you guys should read it.
Here's a question. Do you guys think the Yattering was a precursor to Mr. Be Gone?
It seems really similar, doesn't it?
Maybe one day someone will come up with a grand unified theory of the Barker. That would be nice. That would be nice. You raised a really interesting question.
He does seem really similar.
Does this guy have anything to do with Mr. Be Gone's demons, or does this guy have anything to do with the creatures from Everville? That?
A little bit. The whole atmosphere of Yattering and Jack was a little bit lighthearted, and I felt that Mr. Be Gone, which I'm sure will be covered in a future episode, also seemed a little bit lighthearted.
True.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the Yattering go up against Harry D'Amour.
Yes. For the short story for the upcoming volume.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's send a tweet to Clive.
Yeah. So the next one is Pig Blood Blues, which to me is the most depressing out of all of the stories in this volume. Definitely. I mean, the whole setting is depressing. The children's sort of a prison. It's like a juvenile detention kind of a place. Mm-hmm. And the main character is an ex-cop who's a teacher, who's just trying. He just kind of wants to help out, and everyone fights him. And he tries and tries until at the end he's just killed.
Well, there is kind of a conspiracy going on, right? So that's why he's left out of this whole conspiracy thing going on in this school. But it's funny that you should mention that it's the most depressing of the Books of Blood, because definitely it's a story that has a weird vibe, and it's one of the few that I haven't really bothered to read again. So... Yeah.
And in 2008, when they were finishing up Dread and the Book of Blood, there was all this excitement about how this was going to be the next movie, and they were casting it in Phoenix. And I was thinking, why that one? I mean, I think it's an all right story, but there's so much better material. I mean, like a remake of Rawhead Rex would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, wow. If there's a time to do a remake of Rawhead Rex, I mean, now the technology has evolved so that they don't have to get a rubber mask with glowing LED light eyes.
Yeah.
So who knows? I wonder who owns the rights for the cinematic adaptation. I have no idea.
Yeah. So, and this is about a kid he's kind of a Peter Pan. He doesn't want to grow old and die. So he hangs himself in the pigsty, and the pig eats him. And his spirit goes into the pig. And that's kind of what the whole conspiracy is all about. And the administrators are all in on it, except for the governor, who apparently they murdered him and locked his office. And fed his heart to the pig.
He's like an actual straw man. He's like an actual scarecrow thing.
Yeah, he's Weekend at Bernie's.
That's an accurate description, I'd say. Yeah, it's the Remand Center for Adolescent Offenders.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so, and then in the movie that was going to happen, they talked about making it, focusing more on the fact that it's a ghost story and making it more of a, kind of a ghostly kind of a thing. I don't know, I mean, maybe that would have helped, but it's hard to even care about any of the characters in this story.
Well, I don't know, I mean, I think there's certainly been other short stories which I probably would have figured would have been further back in the list in terms of likely to be made into a film.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a look at The Last Illusion, I never would have thought that would have been a feature film, but I mean, Lord of Illusions is one of my favorite films now, so I think it's really
it's
just
so different from the story, too.
Yeah, so it's really a question of how a story is approached. I mean, it's possible. I can see the plot twist at the end about, the realization of who the pig is.
Yeah.
If done right, it could really be a shocking moment, a real turning the corner moment for a horror film.
And this is one of those where the main character is in the dark, and we, the readers, and everybody else knows what's going on, but this poor guy is just trudging along, trying to help this kid who has given up and knows that he's going to be fed to the pig.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's just...
It's interesting that this book, that Hoppenstein book, mentions also a dual meaning in the title. Like, Pig Blood Blues is not only referring to the pig of the story.
But also to the policeman, yeah.
It's also referring to the policeman who kind of, introduces himself as the pig to the...
Grudgingly, because they all keep calling him that.
Yeah, because they're all kids who had problems with authority. And Roger, he wrote something that he needed to bail soon because he had some family stuff.
Oh,
so I don't know. Yeah, he's offline now.
Okay. All right, well, goodbye, Roger.
Well, Roger just left us because he needed to take care of other things, so we'll just keep it up with the three of us.
Yep, and we're getting near the end. So anything? Yeah, is there anything else we wanted to say about Pig Blood Blues?
About the story or about the adaptations?
Well, there's a there is a Tapping the Vein adaptation that we can talk about. The movie, there's not really much else to say about it. I think that it didn't happen, and it's probably never going to happen now, or at least not for a long time.
Right.
But the comic book I thought was right on. I mean, it seems really, really close to what happened in the short story.
Yeah, while I was just defending, the possibility of making a Pig Blood Blues film, I will say that I thought that the comic adaptation, which was, I agree, very, very literal, I just don't feel that it really worked. Not because of any, deficiency in the artwork or the retelling, but just the visual, literal image of the pig speaking with, a little speech bubble just didn't have the same impact as reading, seeing it in your mind's eye.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of those instances where actually Clive's written word carried the imagery better than a literal translation of his words into art. I think if maybe the artwork had taken...
So, and then would he look like...
Maybe...
Would he look like Wilbur in Charlotte's Web on a movie?
Quite possibly.
Or she. I guess the pig was female, but the boy, obviously was male.
Yeah.
So you didn't like that just the way that it was handled with the... And the comic left out a few little things that didn't really matter too much. There was one scene where, when the first fight out the window and the administrator lady ran down to help out, and he was going to go check out his office, but it was locked. So then he went down to help. And they skipped him going to his office because, what's the point? They also left out that there were two other little pigs there with the bigger pig who's possessed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't say that I didn't like the comic. I thought the comic was a strong adaptation. It just it wasn't as effective, I think, as the story was.
No, I think you're right. Anything else that we want to say about Pig Blood Blues?
Well, not really. I mean, like you guys pretty much said everything. The comic adaptation, it's kind of like, it's a secondary story in the Tapping the Vein volumes.
Yeah.
So, it's like you said, it's a little short.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same impact when you see the pig with a little speech bubble.
Right.
It would, but then again, after watching Babe the movie, I mean...
Yeah, that might lessen the impact of it a little bit.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm kind of a little feverish right now. So you guys will have to cut me some slack if I sound a little random. But it's a story that didn't really make me want to reread it too much because I don't know. Like you said, it kind of bummed me out. The story was a little depressing.
Yeah.
Had this urban prison kind of feel, and had this weird vibe going on with the pigs and the naked boys. And I was like, well, it's a weird kind of story, but it is disturbing. That's for sure.
It's kind of like if Clive Barker had originally written Equus. I think it would have turned out more like this.
Oh, yeah, the movie with Richard Burton, right?
Oh, I just meant the stage play, but yes.
Oh, with Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I don't know the guy's name.
Yeah. I can't think of it. Radcliffe?
Daniel Radcliffe,
Daniel
yes.
Radcliffe.
Actually, Leonard Nimoy back in the early days was actually in a stage production of Equus.
Oh,
really?
Okay.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
All right, well, the next one is Sex, Death, and Starshine, so we'll just be talking about the story, because I don't think there's any adaptations of this, right?
Right.
Not that I was able to find.
And it's a shame, because it's one of my favorite stories in the Books of Blood.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this would be a great movie. And we're in the zombie ages now, because, we got The Walking Dead, and we got the TV shows being made with pilots where girls fall in love with zombies and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, this story, it's amazing. It's got, zombie thespians from hell, and it's really funny. I thought this story has a very black humor component. At the same time, handles it very well. It doesn't go into comedy, but it's definitely very camp because of, it uses stage actors, and it's a really entertaining story. It's one of my favorite ones.
And I plays during the day and writing the Books of Blood at night, right? So he was pretty deep in it as far as the theater at the time that he was writing this.
Yeah, I'm sure he put in a lot of ideas that came to him while he was, in the stage doing plays. He probably, just the way he describes being on the stage with the stage lights pointing towards you, and you can't even see the crowd very well, and the whole thing
really
gives you
unflattering description of that the owner of the theater.
Yeah.
Who just all he cared about was the money, and he didn't tell anybody this was their last show because he was selling it to be a warehouse or something.
I would very much like to think that it's a commentary of his own views on producers.
Yeah. I would think so.
It's like the Muppet Show with zombies.
Yeah. It's like what? I'm sorry?
It's like the Muppet Show with zombies.
The Muppet Show with zombies.
Oh, man. Have you seen...
Somebody should pitch that.
Have you seen Meet the Feebles?
Yes.
Peter Jackson's
I have not. I've heard of
movie?
it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh man,
my
that's
God.
wonderful.
Yeah, that was so disturbing.
That is a great movie. Yeah. And it's just that I think the final line in this story is just so amazing that back when I was working in the lab, I had this last line on my lab coat.
Oh, really?
And it was like, what would a resurrection be without a few laughs?
Yeah.
That's right.
That is just so amazing. You know, I really enjoy that line.
Because that skeleton zombie guy came up out of his grave and then he fell over and his jaw exploded on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, it like I said, it's just a really funny. It's got campy, but it doesn't go into comedy. It's a little campy. It's got this very affected thespians, and it's just it gives you this idea of another time when theater had this whole mystique, and these are people from another age of theater.
Yeah,
and I liked it.
That line is funny about what would a resurrection be without a few laughs, because it's like Clive has a lot of resurrections that are not funny at all. Like, nobody laughs when Frank comes back to life in Hellraiser.
It would make a great tagline for a film poster if they ever turned it into a film.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they
you
have
kind
music.
of feel sorry for the director being murdered by that by a nail file, I think it was, by that actress.
To the skull, no less.
Yeah. But it's kind of.
But hey,
it's kind
I don't
of
know how sympathetic of a character the director really was. I mean,
yeah, because all
he kind of had it coming.
Yeah, he was pretty kind of a slave to his own lust, I guess.
And it also has poetry. I mean, this story also has some poetry in there. Like when there's one point where they say, "So the show went on. If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it. That's surfeiting. The appetite may sicken and so die." And it has the whole stage thing going here, and
And that's something that Clive does once in a while, like the opening of Weave World or the opening of The Thief of Always. The first few lines just read like poetry, and they make you want to remember them.
You guys were talking about that guy who gets murdered with a nail file, and
yes, the director.
And there's one quote that someone says to one of the actors. He's upstairs in the gods. They're referring to like the top balcony.
Yeah.
And he says, "In fact, I think I can see him from here." And they ask him, "Is he smiling?" And the guy replies, "Grinning from ear to ear." So.
No, they're not talking about. I reread that too, and they weren't talking about the director. They were talking about the. They were talking about the theater owner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
That means he's drunk, and he was. He'd been drinking.
Right.
By the way, I was just thinking this story would make a great either a Broadway or an off-Broadway play. And can you imagine a doubleheader with Sex, Death, and Starshine as the first play, followed by Frankenstein in Love?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That would be cool.
That would be super
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Ryan, what was the play that they're putting up now in Canada that you mentioned in the last episode?
History of the Devil.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's a great play.
In
that
Montreal.
would also.
Oh, wow.
But definitely this story, Sex, Death, and Starshine, if they turn it into a play, it would have to be a special kind of play. I guess the actors would have to go into the audience and do some things there too. I mean,
I don't know about that. I've seen some pretty interesting fakes where they change your perspective, and you're looking at the back of the stages in silhouette, and you can see kind of like impressions of an audience there. And I'm sure they could probably do something like that.
Cool.
It wouldn't need to literally be, have like extras in the audience or anything, I don't think.
And then they just finish up with this line that says, "The Leachfield turned towards the company, his voice booming in the night, and he replies, 'What do you do?' He said, 'Play life, of course, and smile,'" which is such an optimistic note to end the story. It's like they're reanimated, and now life will be their acting. It will be their final curtain.
Yeah, I thought it was a little harsh that all of those poor actors, burned to death. Because
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of them they were just trying to do their job, and they were suffering through that actress who was so terrible.
Yeah.
Well, they were sacrificed on the altar of art.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I guess
and some of them came back.
That's true. Tallulah came back, yes.
Yeah.
Although she was only like the receptionist or ticket sales lady or something, but still.
Have you guys? I just want to bring up this reference because I don't know if you guys ever read the Swamp Thing comics, but there's a story about a directing company who's shooting a movie about the South and, at the time of the slavery. And there are these black slaves that are reanimated, and they end up destroying the company who's shooting the movie in a big, colonial-style mansion. And at the end, these zombies go into the night, and one of them ends up as, a ticket salesman in a theater. So I thought, it reminds me, I need to find which Swamp Thing story this is, because it always reminds me of this story of Sex, Death, and Starshine, because... Yeah, they just go into the night giggling, and they crash a car. The zombies crash a car, and they just go out into the world, and they go on to live life, as zombies. And one of them ends up as a ticket guy in a theater booth. So that's a funny reference that I wanted to put in.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, is there anything else we want to say about this one before we go on to In the Hills, the Cities?
I'm good.
I think that's it for me.
Okay. The next one, In the Hills, the Cities. This one, I think, is probably one of his most impressive stories, just because the whole premise of this story is so unique and so interesting.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. A few years ago, I would have no idea how they could adapt this.
Yeah.
But since then, I have seen a couple of commercials on TV that make me believe that the status of the arts and special effects could actually handle this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, CGI, they could do anything they want.
Yeah, there's a particular beer commercial that comes to mind where there's like this giant made of people that's walking through the city, and he's attracting... Yeah. It's... Well, if I can say the name of the beer, I think it's Miller Lite. Okay. And there's a commercial that's a giant made of people, and he's just walking around, and he goes and he asks for beer, and then one of the guys in the pile of people says, "Actually, I'd like to have a Miller Lite." So the giant just comes out, and
I'll see if I can find it on YouTube. If I can, I'll put it on the website.
Yes, it's definitely on YouTube. Yeah, and there's another one that I've seen also that involves like people roped together, making a giant and walking. And I think I posted that on Facebook Revelations wall one time. I need to find that one too.
That's cool.
So that makes me believe that the special effects are actually at a point where maybe we could see this, but I don't know how they would adapt the rest of the story.
Yeah.
If special effects wise, because it's a heavy kind of story.
And and I think that Hollywood still might have a problem with the two main characters being gay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that, maybe Hollywood's not ready for that yet. But
I think the story would need to be adapted pretty dramatically. I mean, in order for it to be turned into a film. I mean, it doesn't really head in any direction. There's really no
it's like a fighting couple
the story's aiming for.
A fighting couple is driving through the country in Yugoslavia, and then they run into this.
Yes, I think that impression of the story not going really anywhere is kind of like a reflection of the main characters being lost.
Yeah.
So they actually get lost. Yeah. So, and they're just in a little Yugo car or something. And he's just going like, "Hey, let's go see the convent," and the other guy's like, "I don't want to see a convent,"
Yeah. Well, and the idea that these two cities would be so excited about this war that they do every 10 years where they can create this giant, and fight each other. And then this was supposed to be a big tragedy when one of them fell and everybody died, but it's like, isn't that what's supposed to happen? I mean, if it didn't fall on its own, it would have fallen when it got punched.
Right. We never get to see what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Was it supposed to be just a mock fight?
Yeah.
Was it like, were they supposed to just, stand against each other and then just walk away? And we never get to see that because they don't actually fight at all. One of them just starts disintegrating on one side, and that just collapses the whole city. And but it's like this amazing ritual that these two cities would make, and it's just really impressive. I mean, the comic book adaptation
is really
nailed it. It's really good. It kind of nailed it completely.
And I love the way that the giants were drawn in that comic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think this is actually the opposite of Pig Blood Blues in that the artwork in the comics really captured exactly. It was a literal adaptation of what Clive wrote, but it captured not only the image, but the spirit of what it was he was trying to depict.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very effective, very, very, just really beautiful imagery to see.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there's a couple of close-ups in the comic book art of the giant and how the ropes would go through the people and the head
with the teeth made out of babies' heads and the eyes are like 5 people's faces looking out.
Yes, and it's like Popolak singing, and it's like, wow, it just blows my mind whenever I see this story.
Incredibly drawn. Really was.
Definitely.
At the time,
recommended.
It's one of the stories that kind of blew me away when I was like, wow, this is good. I need to get all the other 5 volumes of the Books of Blood because this right here is like,
chances are this will probably never be made into a movie. I think back in 2008 we were thinking it was looking like they were going to make a movie out of every single Books of Blood story, but now, a bunch of time has passed and I'm kind of thinking it's not so much anymore.
I just can't see this as like an hour and a half to 2 hour film. I mean, I can see this as maybe a short film, like a 20-minute, 20 to 40
Possibly, with the technology these days, maybe in kind of an indie film, like some guy would make in his Mac or something with a lot of.
But it would take a serious CGI studio to do the cities.
Could be, these days. I mean, there are really talented people out there that.
Yeah, you just don't want it to look like
for
something
just like
off of the
a
Sci-Fi
few $100s,
Channel.
they'll make like Alien Invasion. Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Which, the Sci-Fi Channel does some good stuff, but they do a lot of really hokey things, too.
Oh, my gosh, yes. You guys seen Behemoth?
No.
Well, I haven't watched anything on the Sci-Fi Channel in a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, that was the last one. So last time we had a contest to see if somebody could name Cal's father in Weave World, and we didn't get any responses. So to that,
it'll pick up.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make the contest even easier this time. Somebody just needs to respond. Every body is a book of blood. Wherever we're opened, we're blank. So somebody needs to fill in that last word.
Come on, guys. It's free lunch.
Yeah. So
have you guys... sorry.
The prize for that is I've got a Berkeley paperback Book of Blood signed in like the late 80s by Clive Barker.
Oh, nice.
Volume 1. I've since replaced all my Books of Blood with the second edition UK hardcovers. So they have Clive's paintings on them.
I have...
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I have the Sphere books from 1984. They also have Clive Barker's artwork on the cover.
Yeah, so the first editions were paperbacks, right? And then the second edition they made a hardcover.
I guess so, yes.
Yeah. And
I have a version... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, that's all right.
I've got a version from 2001 from a company called Stealth Press. Ooh. It's all 6 volumes in one single hardcover.
Is that great big white one?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, actually, there's an interesting story about that because I was just over visiting at Clive's house when I was in California. Well, actually, at the office house, and they have a whole bookshelf full of those because the publishing company went out of business. And
yes, they did.
And they were going to destroy them all, and the people in Clive's office said, no, don't destroy them, we'll take them. So they drove a truck up to his house in Beverly Hills and just dumped a pallet of these books in the middle of the street, so nobody could drive on the street anymore. So those guys were all rushing to get them all and bring them into the house.
Wow.
So that's why he sells them at conventions and stuff now.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was at the Texas Frightmare weekend, and they had a big pile of them to sell.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's a beautiful edition. It really is.
Yeah, it looks really nice. So I guess that's it. Right? We're here at the end. If anyone wants to leave feedback or has any questions, my Skype is ryan.danhauser, so that's ryan.danhauser. Twitter, you can send us messages on Twitter or follow us at BarkerCast. My email is ryandanhauser@gmail.com. Go to the website is www.clivebarkercast.com, or go to the Fifth Dominion forum, which is timewinds.com/Clive.
Everybody out there, keep reading Clive Barker books.
Yeah.
And, leave some feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for listening.
And leave a review on iTunes as well.
It's safe now.
Dad, isn't that true what he just said about heaven?
Possibly is. But you know what I always say? What are you muttering back there, Yat? What is it that I always say?
Que sera, sera?
Right. That's what I always say.